GMB More exclusive.
All right, we are live, WEAA.org. If you're streaming, 88.9 FM, the voice of the community. Good morning.
I'm trying to figure out what was the GMB More exclusive.
This right here. Don't you see her sitting right here? Hello.
Yes. She is here.
She is here.
Yes, you know, to friends, she may be known as Vicky, but to those who really know, she's known as the female Alex Haley. Okay, published author of the book Akata, the Saga of an American Girl Finding Her Roots. Welcome, V.H.Carlos, to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How are you, my dear?
I'm well. I'm overwhelmed by the love and the energy in this room.
Of course.
First of all, you look amazing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yes.
you came dressed to kill. Okay.
Got the pearls on, got the black on. She's sharp.
Right.
Yes, let's talk about it. So the book, Akata, tell us about the story, the inspiration. What made you put the pen to the paper and create this?
Very nice question. So I have this crazy testimony
Okay.
about how God turned my life around and told me to find my ancestors. Now, the reason why this is such a profound story is because I grew up anti-Black. And I grew up anti-Black because I was bullied for being a dark-skinned girl.
Right.
So every time I would walk out the house, people would A, assume that I'm African, and then B, would demean me based on my skin color. So my anti-Blackness actually manifested in very interesting ways. I didn't want to go to an HBCU. I didn't want to date anybody who was darker than me, just nonsense. And then by the time I got into grad school, basically God told me to quit my job. Actually, after I graduated grad school, told me to quit my job and find my ancestors. Of course, I didn't do that because my job was paying my student loans. I'm like, I'm not crazy. But when God tells you to do something,
Put God on hold.
I sure did.
Get back to you, God.
I sure did. No, I was Jonah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I was like, I'm gonna go to Tarshish. Okay. Then it was over there. I'm going this way. But so he got me fired from that job on Ash Wednesday. So he wanted me to know that it was him.
Right. Won't he do it?
That's how you did it. And kept me unemployed for 7 years so I could find my ancestors.
Wow.
7 years.
So how were you able to sustain yourself?
So my ex at the time basically became my provider, but God really used him to help me go through the process of finding my ancestors. And it all started off with a DNA test. So I took my last paycheck and I bought 2 DNA kits from my parents. And my father came back 93% African, and most of it was West Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Ivory Coast. And my mother came back 100% African. And she came from the southeastern Bantu. So that's basically South Africa, the southern part of Africa. And I'm like, wow. And then when I got my DNA test results back, I said, this movie, it was originally supposed to be a movie. I said, this movie could be almost a commercial for Ancestry.com. But at the time, I saw no commercials with Black people on it. So I said, let's find out more information. So I basically sent them a crazy email. Just sounded like a crazy, angry Black woman. I'm like, how come this?
Ancestry.com?
This is Ancestry.com. I'm calling them out because they need to call me. So I sent them this email and I said, hey, do Black people even use your services? And how come I don't see anybody who look like me in your commercials? That led to an invite. And that got me to Utah to go to the headquarters to actually sit down and talk to these people. So from that point,
they had home court advantage, though.
They did.
Let's invite you to the whitest state and have this conversation about why there are no Black people on our service.
Exactly.
And what was that experience like?
You know what? Utah is beautiful. Oh my God.
Of course it is.
I've never been there. So I got my graduate degree in Hawaii. Okay. So I love the mountains in Hawaii. But Utah, it's like an Alaskan Hawaii. The mountains were so beautiful, super white. But their headquarters is nestled in the mountains. I'm like, this is you can tell that there's a God on earth. Right. Because I've never seen anything that beautiful. But I mentioned Ancestry.com because from that moment, which was around 2016, you start seeing Black people on their commercials. So when you see it, just think of me because I totally take credit. I totally take credit for that.
So when they brought you out there, what did this courting consist of?
No, good question. So I wanted to know, how can Black people effectively use their service? Like, yes, I found my ancestors through their DNA kit, but if I'm going to tell the world to use it, you need to tell me how Black people can benefit from your company. And they basically broke it down, like how, like they have like the largest database of, documents, military records, obituaries, local, state, and governmental documents. That's how I was able to find my ancestors. And they tell you that especially with Black research, like you're going to hit like an 1870 wall. And that's when we basically stop becoming humans and start becoming property.
Right.
So I hadn't even done any research. I just did the DNA test at that point.
Recognize that.
Yes. Oh, I record that whole conversation in the book.
Because people think when you say that, that's some conspiracy theorist bull, but it's really something. Your social security number and all of that, right?
Yes. Absolutely. And I thank God for that conversation because it truly prepared me for what was to come. I want to encourage, especially the youth, to become the historians of their family. But I would definitely do them a disservice if I didn't tell you to also get therapy while you do it. Because this experience was very traumatic for me. First of all, I grew up anti-Black. I didn't care about history. I didn't care about culture. So the fact that God himself said, hey, you need to go on this journey. And now I'm reading documents. And I love history, right? Like when I was in school, when I had to read any of these documents, I'm like, oh, that's history. But when I'm going through my own, like these documents felt like 20-pound weights in my hands. These are no longer nameless, faceless people. These are my people. If they weren't here, I wouldn't be here today. And it was truly traumatic. Another storyline in my book was I found out through this process that my last name, my maiden name, is actually my mother's last name.
What?
So I know it's crazy. And my father doesn't know his father. And I'm like, why am I finding this out at like 23? I'm like, so really, like I was doing a healing in my family, like restoring my family.
So your parents didn't have these kind of conversations with you?
No. My father did try to infuse like Black history, Black culture in me. And, we talked about the Black Panthers and whatnot, but our personal history, no, we've never had those types of conversations.
So did I hear you correctly when you said your parents were of African descent?
Through the DNA test. But both of them are born and raised in South Carolina.
So they didn't know that?
No. But my mother, anytime that we would talk about it, she said, oh, I know that my people are Zulu. And we're like, why would you think that? And she said, because all of my brothers are Black, shiny men, just like the show. So because of that show that came out in, I think, 1973 in America, apparently they actually used actual Zulu, the people from that tribe in that movie. And my mother was just like, yo, that's my family.
Right.
Wow.
And through the DNA test, it basically confirmed that.
Wow.
But at the time, when she would tell me this as a kid, I was traumatized because one of the names that they used to call me was Shaka Zulu. So I'm like, there's no way. There's no way that I can claim those people as my own. But, my mother knew. So